extend a warm welcome to everyone here, to students and teachers who are returning from spring break, and to our 4 panelists for visiting us today. Some thank yous are also in order. It's a potentially long list that I'll keep short for our time here. First, thank you to our panelists who have taken time out of their busy schedules to share their insight and experience with our students. Thank you to Ms. Rana El-Masri and Ms. Claire Shalhoub for their attention to detail and for the countless hours they've put into this endeavor. And thank you to Saeed El-Qadi for his tireless effort, his undying enthusiasm, and his organizational skill. The High School Conversations series has developed organically over the course of the year. We have tried to have a more service-based and intellectual focus to our whole school gatherings. The name High School Conversations was coined somewhere along the way as we've had guests such as Dr. Malik Tabal, Mr. Ziad Abishakar, and Dr. Najat Saliba. High School Conversations is a fitting name, and we plan to have many more gatherings of this kind in the near future. When we think of conversations, what comes immediately to mind is speaking. A conversation is 2 or more people talking to each other. But the best, most stimulating conversations require participants to listen and to think. That's where I'd ask the students to lay the emphasis today, on the listening and the thinking that goes into a good conversation. Students, you've been invited here today to listen to 4 highly intelligent, civically engaged people. We invite you to think about the issues our panelists discussed, to think about those issues deeply, and to think about those issues from all possible angles. We hope today's panel discussion brings students closer to the ACS mission and inspires students to solve problems with creativity and integrity, and to serve the world community with understanding and compassion. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few basic expectations. No cell phones. Please keep them put away, fully out of sight. Also, no side talk. Please keep your attention focused on the panelists, and please remain seated for the duration of the assembly. We're probably going to go over time today into our last period, and we'll be wrapping things up at 2:30, more than likely. And before I turn it over, just one disclaimer. We expect that you'll hear many divergent views this afternoon. As the host of this discussion, ACS has provided an occasion to examine such views, but the school is neither endorsing nor taking a position on the matters under discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Saeed El-Qadi, and he will take it away from here. Thanks, Saeed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Campana. So I'm Saeed. I'm an ACS senior, and it's my honor to welcome you all to the first ever ACS political panel. Before we move on to our 4 esteemed speakers, I'll try to be quick. Since October 2019, Lebanon's been thrust through different rhythms of governmental turnover and political uncertainty. We've been thrust through crisis and tragedy after tragedy. We had a tragedy in Beirut in August 2020, a tragedy in Akkar in August 2021, and a tragedy at sea just a few days ago. This panel is meant to serve as a window into the divergent and very different opinions and perspectives that make up the Lebanese political landscape. So to briefly introduce our 4 panelists, we have Dr. Fadi El-Jardali, AUB professor and the founder and director of the AUB Knowledge to Policy K2P Center. We have Mr. Halim Shebaya, a political analyst and the director of the Arab Association of Constitutional Law, AACL. We have Ms. Paula Yacoubian, a previous MP and a prospective MP running with the Liwatani list this election. And we have Mr. Kostanian, the host of LBCI Vision 2030 and the executive chairman of Kulluna Irada. So panelists, welcome to High School Conversations. Over the next hour, we'll be diving into 4 main topics. We'll first speak briefly about Lebanese youth political disengagement. We'll move on to the Lebanese media landscape, speak about the role of the Lebanese parliament, and then wrap up speaking about the rise of independent and alternative parliamentary candidates. And so, given that, we'll entertain a few questions from the audience. Before panelists, you'll get a chance to give a final remark. For the first topic of Lebanese political disengagement, we want to have a poll of the audience. From students, who feels that they know enough to be engaged in the upcoming parliamentary elections? Who doesn't? Okay. Yeah. And so for the first question, I think we can kick it off with Mr. Shebaya. What would your message be to young people who feel disillusioned and disengaged with politics locally? And then we'll move from panelist to panelist for this topic.
Thank you, Saeed. A pleasure to be with you all. Thank you for hosting us. Thanks to ACS. So a pleasure to be with all the esteemed panelists. So I'm not one to speak to you as youth, as telling you what to do and what not to do, and this is not my approach in terms of how I think about politics, how I think about generally issues in life. Because at the end of the day, speaking about disillusionment is a very personal question. When you're disillusioned with something, it means you had big dreams or hopes in something. And I don't know if those present here, and at least the target audience of this political talk, who are between 14 and 17 years, as I understood, I don't think it's too early to be disillusioned, if I may, and I'm happy to hear if you disagree with me. And the reason I say that because you're disillusioned with what? The politics of your parents, of your grandparents? I don't know your parents or your grandparents. They may have great politics, they may have bad politics. But this is initially I think, the main way I'd like to answer it, is that actually you have no right to be disillusioned in that sense. Because I feel like extremely privileged. You have a great education in this school. You probably have great prospects going forward. I know Saeed is going to Harvard. I know all of you are going to universities. So in some ways, you've already won the lottery, because I think a large majority of students your age in Lebanon, and I don't mean here to be preachy or saying like, oh, there are people who are not eating in I don't know which country, so you have to eat your food, as our parents used to tell us. But the idea is you really need to dream big, and that would be my message, because in 2022, I think you know more than I do, even a lot of these applications that you're on, a lot of the smart startups and the successful businesses actually have been started by people in their late teens. Applications I don't even know how to make them work, but that are worth billions of dollars. So in brief, I'm questioning even the framework of the question or the wording of the question. I don't like the separation between youth and us, not because I'm growing older and I still want to feel young, but because a good idea in politics is a good idea, and it doesn't matter if you're 18 years old or if you're 40 like myself, or if you're 60 or if you're 70. So that would be the way I'd like to kick off, and I'd be interested to see if you'd agree or disagree.
Dr. El-Jardali.
Thank you, Saeed. And again, it's always great to feel to have that feeling to be in a high school. So I'm happy for this conversation today. I just wanted to build on the discussion. The first thing I want to say that, in fact, we have, let's look at the, I would say, glass half full, not half empty. Over the last, few months, or at least since the Beirut blast, we have seen more and more engagement of youth in the community. And we have a lot of examples what youth has been doing to their community, aftermath of Beirut blast, for some of the, event and incidents that happened in Lebanon. So when we say about youth engagement, sometimes it's really, there is a perception that we cannot do anything, or our role will not matter. Well, let me tell you one thing, and this is based on the experience of youth in many other countries. The first thing, that you have to take your role seriously, and they have to take you seriously. There's no other way about that. So what that means, that much of even with the new vision of what Parliament is, and I'm sure there will be discussion related to that. I'm sure Paula, can also add more to this. We have seen now in many other countries, youth are actually working with parliamentarians to co-design and co-produce policies and laws that are youth-friendly, that are sensitive to the needs and wants of youth or concerns. So that's first. Second, engagement requires awareness. And one of the things that we've learned with Saeed and some of the ATS talented people last year, that youth requires also more awareness about policy making, how policies get done, about the political system. Not to become political, but you need to be also informed and educated, because the only way to know where your role is or where do you fit is once you understand the political context, the political system. You understand your contribution to society. So this is very important, and I think we have more role to play, including universities, in order to raise more awareness related to this. You are the engine of innovation, I tell you that. With the experience of many countries, much of the innovations come from youth, from empowered youth. And I'm hoping with the new election, with the new parliament, we will create a space for youth to come forward, to be much more engaged in developing, reflecting on laws, legislation, and policies. And one is important thing that at the end, whatever you do, it's all about what matters. It's all about what type of contribution you can make to the community. And there's no way you can make contribution to the community if you're not really quite engaged in the actual system, in policy. One last point I want to mention. You have a role now with the election. It's not about supporters or not. It's about we need to start changing the culture of how people vote. We're not going to vote because we are against this party or against this person, or because my father or my mom or my neighbor told me that this is a good guy or this is a good lady. This is not about this. You have to be informed about the political platforms. You have to look at baramij intikhabiyya. You have to start seeing what this party is offering in terms of the economy. Would you be employed later on when you actually graduate? How you will be actually looking? Would you be actually covered in terms of health insurance? Would you be able to have, for your kids to live in a healthy, safe society? Would you have a social health insurance for your and retirement for your mother and father? So this is what you have to look at, what matters, and this is what should help you make an informed decision.
Thank you, Dr. El-Jardali. I think this is a perfect segue to you, Ms. Yacoubian.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be back in Paul's school. So I'm the mother of Paul Harb. I think he was with most of you here during his years in this school. Since nursery he was here, and unfortunately he had to leave after the Beirut blast, like a lot of other students. Well, let me shortly tell you, after the blast, I managed, me and Paul, to convince his dad to stay in Lebanon. And we told him the explosion happened and Paul is safe. Nadia and Gabi are also safe. They were together in Jebel. Usually they play every day in Karantina in Flip. I think most of you know this place. It was completely destroyed. That day it was the birthday of Nadia and Gabi, and they were in Jebel, and this is how they survived. So we told him, The kids survived, and we're staying here. 2 days later, his goalie, the guy he plays with, Muhammad Atwi, maybe you know him, he lost his life with an empty bullet that came in his head, far away from the gunshots that were happening because they were burying one of the Dahaya, one of the victims of the blast. I'm telling you this story because this is the story of many young Lebanese, the story of many of your friends, and many more, they just want to leave. They're looking for the right time to leave this country. And this is the saddest part of the story. Briefly, I want to tell you, you just cannot give up on your country, just like you cannot give up on your family, on your friends, on your neighborhood. And it's exactly the same. We cannot give up and decide that the country is sick, we need to just leave it. If your mother is sick, you help her, you empower her, you stay next to her. And the country is just like a mother. So this disengagement is very heartbreaking because I'm from a generation, I'm 46-year-old, but I really rely on you, on your awareness. You were born with smartphones, and this is a tool that we didn't have when we were your age. Smartphones means you can check your facts all the time. You can double-check anything you hear or you listen. But in the same time, it's a lot of, a lot of distraction. So please, have fun on your smartphones, but try also to know what's happening to your country. It's not Lebanon that failed us. We failed Lebanon. We failed this country. We believed them for years and years. I buried many of my friends in this country. And each time I buried someone, I was very disgusted, very disappointed, and I was thinking what to do. But then in 2016, all the political parties, they came together to a concession. And everything all of a sudden ended, as if nobody died, as if no blood was spilled, as if this country wasn't torn apart enough. So the sad part is that they came together with zero benefit for the people, with no public interest for the people. They only divided the shares between them. They divided the cake until there's no more cake left. You need to know this fact, and you need to know much more, so you know how to move forward. Even if you don't want to stay in Lebanon, you need to be engaged. This country needs lots of activism. At your age, people are passionate. They're passionate about human rights, about rights in general. And people your age, they change many things in lots of places. In '68, the Sorbonne uprising in France, in Paris, changed the whole political scene in that country. In Lebanon, you can do much, much more. You shouldn't think that the mafia is too strong, so we should give up. This is what they want. They want you to give up. They want only those they can control to go back, vote for them, and continue over and over reproducing the same political caste. This corrupt junta cannot continue. Even if they change their skin every time, they steal everything, even they steal whatever the opposition is supposed to do. They sit in the government, they say they are against the budget, but they spend according to this budget. This is not a healthy political life. I don't want to take a lot of time, but I wish we can answer some questions, how to be engaged, how we can do things better, and I'm really hoping that we can give them some hope that change can happen in this country. We will only fail if all of us will think that, no, we cannot change anything. So losing hope is like being disengaged, not knowing what to do. I just beg you not to do that, because this country needs you, needs your enthusiasm. Just think that we are maybe one of the only country in the world where you cannot vote when you're 18. And it's not only about sectarianism, no. It's also because you have the sparkle, the passion. You are rebellious at this age. They think at 21 maybe they can taint you with the dogma of these political parties. And unfortunately, every time we have an important échéance like the elections, again and again, they are succeeding in getting the Lebanese people to vote for the same parties. This time, I'm really hoping it will be different, and I'm relying on people your age, people with your awareness, and you have the chance, like my co-panelist said, you are privileged to be here. You are very, very privileged, so please give back to this country. Thank you.
And then finally, Mr. Kostanian.
Thank you. An honor to be here. So the question is about youth engagement. I would say that life without engagement is totally meaningless. Living a self-centered life around pleasures and around self-success might be appealing, but the definition of mankind, of humanity, is also to look beyond our self-interest, is to care about the community, to care about something bigger. That's why humans have philosophical views or religious views or social views. It's the definition of what humankind is all about. So what I would say to you is get engaged. And I'll start by the broader image and go down to Lebanon. Get engaged in any cause. Get engaged in fighting for climate, for biodiversity. I know today that we have a lot of international causes that are very important and that are appealing to the youth. So I meet a lot of young people. Today the culture of your generation is a bit maybe different than ours. You see things on a more global scale. You care about more global issues than maybe typically Lebanese issues. So this I understand, I respect, I encourage you also to pursue that. But why Lebanon? Why Lebanon is important? So engagement is important, but I believe the engagement in a Lebanese cause or for this country is even more important. What's really different about this country is the gap. There is a huge gap between what this country is meant to be, or what this country could be, or what this country is designed to be, and what this country is. And the difference, this gap, is where you can make an impact. This country is meant to be one of the most beautiful countries in the world. We have one of the most diverse nature in the world. We have a cultural diversity that is amazing and that we rarely see in other parts of the world. We have an openness to the world. We have a deep understanding of Western culture, of Eastern culture. We have amazing food, amazing people, amazing mountain, amazing beaches. We have the only Mamluk city that is Trablus. We have Saida, we have Baalbek, we have the Cedars. We have something unique. What the past generation did is horrible. They destroyed that country out of greed, out of being self-centered, out of lack of vision, out of hatred, of war, of violence, out of servitude to foreign powers, out of sectarianism. So we can make a difference. Maybe in climate change, it's a cause that speaks to me a lot. What difference can I make? I'm very conscious. I try to be really, to respect a lot. I don't take a plastic bag when I buy something in a shop. But okay, on the scale of humanity, what is my impact? It's important, but the impact is really reduced. In Lebanon, we can make an impact. Each one of you can make an impact. And I believe that the hands that were raised, I was pretty puzzled by the result, because this is not what I see in my daily life. So maybe it's a bias, but I saw that youth got re-engaged after October 17. As maybe some of you might know, so I have a show on TV that is quite sober and serious and so on. And before October 17, the viewership was really like 1%. After October 17, I saw a lot of, today my viewers are, majority are from the youth. Whereas where I started the show, the TV channel told me TV is for 40 and plus. Younger generation don't watch TV. And after October 17, I saw a lot of interest in TV, in the tents in Beirut downtown and in Tripoli and in the south. We do Zoom calls, all the four of us, I believe, on a weekly basis with communities, with diaspora people. All those people are interested, are eager to learn what happened to the economy, what can we do about the constitution, how to resolve sectarianism, how to renew like the whole social system of Lebanon. So I'm seeing a lot of good vibes. And I hope that at the end of this session that we will be somehow contagious and we will do the poll again and see a lot of more hands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kostanian, and thank you for all the opening remarks. So we'll now be moving into the discussion style area of this event. We'll be speaking about media in Lebanon first, because Lebanon's had a long-standing history with independent journalism, and especially recently, in light of the revolution in 2019, we've seen an upsurge in alternative media and an upsurge in politicized journalism. I think it would be nice to jump from panelist to panelist on this one, just quick takes, and I think we can start with you on continuing that idea. You're the host of Vision 2030 on LBC. And on that show, you entertain a very diverse cast of characters from all sides of Lebanese politics. From your perspective and not the viewership perspective, how has your role, do you think, in the Lebanese political landscape changed since October 2019?
Yes, thank you. So to start, I believe media is part of the problem in Lebanon. TVs, newspaper, the corruption that you see in the political landscape is even more present in media. And media have or had a big responsibility, I believe, in what happened, because they didn't prevent, they didn't spread awareness, especially on the economic and financial crisis that happened. There was an omerta in Lebanon, so the loi du silence, so everyone, they could not speak about it because corruption is really very present in the media. I believe my role personally, and the role of all the shows that happened on social media specifically, because I believe that social media also changed and helped the traditional media to change, is to get experts and expertise. And this is the feedback that I get the most often, and I'm proud of this feedback. We were used for 20 years or 15 years to host politicians that are always pathos-oriented and that speak to only emotion, not intelligence, and that have a tribal way of framing all the subjects. So that there was no programmatic views, no ideas for the future, no facts, nothing. So I believe maybe what I helped or participated in changing in Vision 2030 is to get experts. And those experts challenged the politicians. And the Lebanese public saw that we have people that are smarter, brightest than our politicians. And this helped change something and promote a new generation of people. For example, Fadi was in my show for several times. So as an expert, as a technical person, and people said, those are the kind of people that we want to see as MPs, as ministers, because they have knowledge and they can help change Lebanon. So I believe this is the role of media.
Nice. Then maybe this is a smooth segue to you, Dr. Jardali. Your center's motto is evidence-based policymaking.
Right.
Do you think that the media that we're exposed to as Lebanese citizens is evidence-based?
Well, if we look at evidence about the role of media worldwide, according to systematic reviews, you can see that media is influencer to actually raise awareness of people about policy issues, raise awareness of policymakers about what are the agendas, items that they need to work on, try to advocate to push areas of interest to the policy agenda, and also use as an accountability tool. The problem we have in Lebanon, building on what Mr. Albert mentioned, I think it's extremely important. According to a certain index in terms of independence of media, I think out of 18 countries, Lebanon is scored one of the highest politicized media among those 18 countries. Which speak reality to the fact that many, and I'm not really criticizing any media or TV, whatever, but we have almost, I think, more than 78% of them are either owned by politicians or former politicians or parliamentarians, etc., which in fact might compromise independence. When I look at media, when I work with media, we always ask how this is funded and how this is really quite de-linked from the political system. That's why in Lebanon they say, if you want to know the truth, read all the newspapers so you can understand what happened. You cannot depend only on one source. So this is the reality. The reason why I'm saying that, because we have done, and this is a published study, by the way, we have done media review to look at how newspapers write to shape public opinion. And out of a score of 10, this is about the credibility of the story, in Lebanon, we scored 2.68 about the credibility and the quality of the story that is being reported in newspaper, which tells you something. So that's why it's an important, I think, what Mr. Albert mentioned. The second point we want to see more media engaged, and we would like to see more investigative journalism. We're starting to see that, by the way, in Lebanon. I think this need to be nurtured more, but they are very important. They can shape, influence public opinion. One last point I want to mention about what Mr. Albert mentioned. In fact, he validated what we found in our published study. When we asked much of the reporters, where do you get your source of information? Most of the time, they only look at expert opinion. But in reality, those are not experts. They are not subject matter experts. And this is really important in terms of this. I mean, look at COVID-19. How many experts we ended up in Lebanon? Everybody was talking about. So, and I want to, really, congratulate Albert for this is one of the unique programs. This is not about, but this is my sincere opinion, Albert, that you are able actually to start really explore and identify the subject matter experts on the policy issues, to speak about evidence and to speak truth to power. And this is what we need media to do more and more in Lebanon.
Thank you, Dr. Jardali. I think before moving on to the Parliament, Ms. Yacoubian, if you could weigh in, maybe in the last 3 years, we used to have a term of Sulta Raba, referring to media as the fourth electoral branch in Lebanon, something that's sort of an accountability mechanism for the government because it's independent. Have you seen any
However,
changes?
it's not. It's not the Sulta Rabi'a. It's, the problem is that the ruling parties, because you don't have a government in Lebanon, you have ruling parties, they own everything. But they own something that maybe you cannot see. It's the narrative. And for this narrative, they need a platform. And the platform is the televisions, the social media, the outreach that they have. I used to think that having Facebook and Twitter and all these accounts will be very beneficial because people will speak directly to each other. There will be word peace. one nation would speak directly to each other without having this medium. But then later on, these same political parties, the dividers, those who, speak about always division, bigotry, hatred, they took over the scene, and they found their place everywhere, and they started distorting the message again. So that's why you need to be more and more engaged. You need to be more and more knowing your fact is very, very important. And also watching all the televisions, reading all the newspaper. No one has the time to do all that, but checking facts in Lebanon can be very fast and can be very easy. Now, the other problem is the WhatsApp groups. They can spread things on social media that they cannot, till today, do it on conventional media. Because conventional media has still a little bit of ethics, and they need to review the content. However, sending something with an unknown source is so easy, and this is now how they are misleading people. So part of staying in power is related to misleading people. The message out there is not accurate, is not the real one. So things are being, there's so much information, in the same time, it's not easy to find the right information. It requires lots of passion and work and patience. So again, if you want me to move to the parliamentarian part, because I was a journalist before being a politician, and when I decided to go into politics, it was somehow a kind of fatigue. After 25 years of being a journalist, I realized that people were not listening anymore. And I felt that I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. Plus, I wanted to tell the Lebanese that there are different parties than those they know. It was somehow a reaction to the 8 and 14 March rhetoric, statements. It was a reaction to their game. So when I met the civil society movement, the new parties, I told them, yes, I would like to join you and go into this adventure and see if people of my country will listen, will see you. In 2018, it was very, very hard. I knew when I was presenting my candidacy that we did not have a seat anywhere. I saw the statistics. I knew everyone talked to me that this is insane. What are you doing? You have the opportunity to be with the strong parties. Why are you doing this? And all of them, when I said that I'm running into elections, they all tried to have me in their lists. Because with this law, you need people that are known. It will be a kind of, they wanted more votes. So they all you know what, we can change, we can do different things this time. We learned, we didn't learn. It was for me very also heartbreaking how they are trying to get anyone who is shedding some light on this opposition. So again, this country needs opposition. We don't have a government, we have ruling parties, and all these ruling parties pretend to be the opposition. Even the biggest parties, they will tell you that we are not to blame. You cannot hold them accountable. And this is how one of the smartest people on earth, again and again, are re-electing the same political caste because they are misleading them. They are telling them, we are not responsible, it's the other. So this blame game should stop. And they rely on two things, creonism and sectarianism. Sectarianism and clientelism, maybe. Clientelism is more broad. This generation is not sectarian. I can see it. I can see it because I talk to my son, his friends. I'm in the street all the time. I talk to this generation. They're not sectarian. They're just human beings. Most of them are global citizens, more than too much attached maybe to the country, to the region, to the daya. So this generation is much more global, and They know much, much more than their parents sometimes. We have to admit this fact. So you can Google anything, and this is very, very powerful. Use this power in your hands to change things, and don't accept the sectarian rhetoric because it proved to be a big failure. If you need more proof, look at the country. This is not normal, and this is not acceptable. And really, you can really change these things. Media is not the answer. Getting engaged, being activist, this is the answer. So this country, again, needs much, much more engagement than what we have right now. And it's a responsibility. Hold them responsible. Elections are about holding those in power responsible for their acts. When you have a political party that did not do their promises, they did not deliver, they need to be changed. And this is not only voting against. Voting against, anyway, is not a bad idea. It's a good idea everywhere in the world. They did it in France years ago when they brought Macron the first time. They said to the right and to the left, go home, get better, do a better job, and come back. And it was a vote sanction. It wasn't just voting for someone, it was voting against the political caste. In Lebanon, we don't have accountability. We don't have a judiciary system that can hold them accountable. So that's why the importance of the election is much, much, much more than anywhere else in the world. You can be disengaged if you're in Europe, if you're in a country where things are okay. But in Lebanon, it's a total meltdown. So now you need to be in charge. If your parents are going to vote again for the same political party, you need to tell them you cannot continue doing the same things you did for years and years, because we will get the same result. Very simple, very simple. Hide their IDs. Remove the passport for one day from their hands. Just don't let them be fooled again by the same propaganda. It is the same propaganda all the time. And it's based on sectarianism only, and they're helping the other that they pretend to fight. Because when we have a problem with extremists in this country, so you have an extremist from this side and an extremist from the other side, but eventually they're helping each other, they're feeding each other. So the fear-mongering game should not be in any way, should not find place in your heads. But try also to remove it from the heads of your parents. Thank you.
I think that's the perfect segue into parliament and alternative candidates running for parliament in Lebanon. Just a few weeks ago, the period for candidates to file to run for election ended. There was a total of 103 parliamentary lists submitted at the Interior Ministry with 718 prospective parliamentarians. 200 of which are independent or alternative. I think I'd like to start this part with you, Mr. Shebaya. In 2018, you published a widely read article where you said that Parliament itself isn't necessarily the place where key decisions happen in Lebanon. Have you seen some changes in that trend since Thawra in 2019?
That's a good question. Actually, I was asked to write something about the elections, and I read that piece, and to be honest with you, it was a bit depressing because I felt that much of what I wrote in 2018, in one way or another, might be still applicable. Because I called it, at that time I called it, it's an irrelevant parliament. Now I'm sure Paula will disagree with me as a member of parliament, but exactly. But let me explain briefly, and then I remind me to I want to say a word about the media also, if you give me the time. We've never been surprised by a decision that Parliament has took, and if anybody wants to correct me on that, I'm happy. I don't think, we knew in 2008, we knew that Michel Sleiman was going to become president when they went into Saht al-Najmi. Why? How did we know? Because the Doha Agreement had agreed on that. In 2016, when Michel Aoun was also elected, there were no surprises. There were just a few jokes, and so in the ballots, somebody put the name of Miriam Klink, if you know her. Others put the names of others, I think you remember it. So even that was showing the Lebanese public, in my view, and I know that a lot of good things also happen in Parliament when it comes to certain legislation, for example, that has to do with domestic violence. We had a very good law that was passed, and other things. But I call it an irrelevant parliament because who takes decisions in this country? Where does power lie? And I think it's no surprise to say that there are a few sectarian leaders, or zu'ama, whatever you want to call them, who take decisions in agreement. They sent their boys to fight, do some street fights, sometimes with guns, but then they have a glass of whiskey at the end of the day together, and they agree. Why do they agree? Because at the end of the day, they want business as usual. They want their business to work. And I'm pretty sure you would know, even from your social, perhaps from families and others, how, in terms of personal relations, most politicians are friends with other politicians who, even sometimes they call them an existential threat and other. So that was one reason why I said that real power does not lie with Parliament. And you know, it's a long discussion. I don't want to bore you with the technical aspect of it. So that's one issue. However, we remain a parliamentary majority. So it won't be a minor thing if today we will have 20, not today, on May 16 we'll have 20 new faces. We can agree with them, we can disagree with them. But no, they will put pressure from within Parliament. But if we want to speak in terms of power, and politics is about power, in a parliament, what do you need? You need a majority. And the majority is 65 MPs. I'm not to do real change. So with the caveat that you never reach change that quickly. So in 2018, I think it was just Paula and another MP who potentially there might have been a bit of messing with the ballot boxes. We don't know. I'm not saying it happened, but there were allegations that it happened. So this is the reason why I said it. It remains my position today. I don't think Parliament is the avenue to change. I think we need a change in the system. The system does not work. We're in a basketball court. Those of you who follow basketball know sometimes that sometimes teams do very badly, and the management of the team comes and says, we need to rebuild. Even if we have stars, we have to rebuild. So I think we need to have, after Parliament, a more serious discussion, hopefully, among the opposition in terms of what type of system is better placed to make Lebanon the type of Lebanon that Albert spoke about, in terms of all the richness that we have. How can we benefit from it? One minor point about the media, if you allow me, just because I didn't get a chance to say it. With everything that was said, I think we have a very free media and we have a very unfree media. So we have a very free media because you open Twitter, you open the newspapers every day, you see somebody saying curses against Mr. from that sect and another person from another sect, and I think that's healthy. So I'm from the view that we need it. Why do we need it? And this is maybe the only point I really want to make, is that about the media, although a lot more can be said, we are one of the few, or maybe the only country in the regional Arab countries and in the Middle East where we have a free media, even with all its shortcomings. So I hope one thing that you also take with you and don't take for granted, that in Lebanon we can still go on Twitter and say what we want. And you know it, you probably know it, that in other countries this is not the case. There's an attempt to remove that. I hope also this will be on the main agenda, that Lebanon should remain a free country in the region to discuss internal politics and to discuss regional and international politics, or else we will not be really free if there are things that we cannot talk about.
This naturally goes to you.
I would like to agree and disagree with my friend here. First, when it comes to the parliament, you're totally right. The decision-making is not there at all. But even if you have 65, even if you have the majority, you cannot do whatever you're supposed to do, because the parliament in Lebanon doesn't work like a parliament. It's just a diwaniyeh. I don't know how we're going to translate this one. It's just, it's like a salon for Nabih Berri, where he decides everything with some few people. I don't know who they are exactly. But I know that he is the one leading there to keep things as they are. So in the parliament, just to tell you, we don't even vote. We don't, I don't know how to say, ما بنصوت. Yeah. There's a nuance because it's, sometimes we manage to raise our hands, sometimes we don't have the time. And there is no vote counts at all. He also managed many times to open a session without a quorum. Anywhere in the world, this is not only unacceptable, he cannot stay in his seat. In Lebanon, everything is acceptable, and we tend to forget the next day because we have bigger problems, bigger issues. So I agree with you, the parliament can be irrelevant. However, it's the place where we can fight the sulta. And it's the most important elections where we can tell the Lebanese people that you can do things differently. If we can change through our democratic system, it's just amazing. Instead of going to wars and instead of going to violence and to more bloodshed, if we can change in the ballots, this is a dream come true. However, again, remember, we cannot do it by a knockout. And even if we have, before, March 14 got the majority, and there was nothing they can do. They went into a concession. This is a country ruled by a party that has arms, illegal arms. And this is where power is. Real power is there. But it doesn't mean we can give up. It's another reason why we should fight and ask to keep this country a free country, and to keep the values that we have instead of, you know, letting go everything because we think we are too small or unable to stand against them. So this is where I wanted to disagree with him. Engagement in any election, not only in this election. I used to give the example of students' elections, and I used to say, vote for those who are independent, for those who don't have the backing of any politicians, any political parties. And then when I say political parties, I mean those who are in power in Lebanon. And remember, the sulta in Lebanon is not one sulta. Otherwise, it would have been so easy. I can guarantee for you, if we had a party of the sulta against opposition, it would have been so easy. But they diluted this. If you look at the scene, you cannot tell who's in the opposition, who's not. Because, again and again, it's not the system that has a problem, for me at least. Bring the best system in the world. I think the US, the founding fathers, they did an amazing system for a melting pot of people, of nations, of real diversity, much more than Lebanon. We have only sectarian diversity, but we are really one nation, one people. So, in the US, for instance, bring the system here to Lebanon, you will see failure if the same people are holding power. So I really don't know if the system is good or bad. It was never appliqué. It was never implemented. So we really don't know. Maybe we do have a system problem. We did not implement the constitution of Taif. We don't implement the laws. Even the laws of the parliament, we don't implement them. We don't implement anything. So to know if the real problem is those who are ruling the country. This is the problem. And saying the system is the problem is as if I'm giving them, you know, less, saying that they are less bad than what they are. I'm pretty sure it's a mafia ruling this country, and they rule it like a professional mafia. And this is where I disagree with the system thing, because I hear this all the time. No, we have a problem with this ruling class, and we don't know if the system is bad or good. That's the only thing that I wanted to say. Thank you.
Ms. Yacoubian, you mentioned student elections. I think this goes directly to you, Dr. El-Jardali. Even though you professionally engage with Parliament and other governmental systems, as an AUB professor, you're exposed to the upsurge in the number of students being politically involved on campus, and you have a few colleagues at AUB that are actually running for election. What do you think of this new wave of parliamentary candidates from non-political backgrounds?
Sure. First of all, let me tell you that I'm a firm believer that change is cumulative. And I think what we're seeing now in Lebanon is really are the seeds for change. Now, when they will become fruits, I'm hoping soon, but it will take time. So I think we have to be a little bit patient and nurture those seeds. This is very important. What that means, before I answer your question, if you allow me to say just one point about the parliament, just to reinforce what Ms. Paula mentioned. The role of the parliament basically is a good representation, fair representation, which goes back to the electoral laws. The second one is making laws, making decisions, and third is monitoring and enforcing and holding people accountable. Now the question is, over the last many years, what we have from experience with the parliament, the question is, was the parliament a decision maker or a decision taker? And this is really, I'm not going to go into detail, but we have a lot of that, which means we know some of the dysfunctions of the functioning of the parliament. We've looked at a lot of policies that failed, by the way. I'll give you an example, and this is a published work. Voluntary health insurance system in Lebanon. This was, celebrated by the early 2000s, by the prime minister, by the government, by the parliamentarian that will respond to the needed population. Do you know that this policy was done because of the Middle East Airlines? Who does know about that? No one knows that this policy was done because of Middle East Airlines, because at that time there was a troika, and the president, speaker of the House, and the prime minister, they brought a consultancy firm to do a recovery plan for the Middle East Airlines, and they decided that they have to lay off around 2,500 employees, which mostly related to one religious sect in Lebanon. And they didn't want to make any tension with the Speaker of the House. So they said, okay, let's try to look at down the law. They looked at the NSSF law, that part of it, voluntary insurance, was not implemented, and they created that. And they celebrated that this is responding to the needs, and that's why it failed. In fact, it went bankrupt, if you recall, a few years ago. In fact, the finding of this, we took it to the parliament, and we presented in front of parliamentarians, and they were looking at us that, because there was no follow-up in terms of accountability. Do the decisions that you are making now are making us better off or worse off in the future? So that's one thing about the parliament. The independent candidate, I think that's what I mentioned. I think this is really good. We're trying to see people coming from unconventional people coming in interested in politics. This is good. But my message to that, and maybe I would remember what Aristotle once mentioned, and he, according to his saying, said, well, this is a quote, I believe, that human beings are political animals. And independent or academicians are welcome in the political zoo, in that to use his words. But they don't expect a better treatment from untenured animals. And what that means independent candidates, they should be well and ready and well aware, well informed about the system. It's good to have good intention, and it's good to have expertise in certain subjects, but you need to understand the political system. You need to understand the context. Politics is about trade-off. There is a lot of coalition that I was hoping, for example, with all the different lists. We have many lists that is coming, many of them also coming from people that want to see a change. But I was hoping personally, that this will be an opportunity to create a new political reformist class coming from those, and unfortunately we didn't see that. Now I'm still hoping that this will happen at some point, but it is really about coalition. So independent candidates, this is good, but not sufficient to make a change. And this is very important, meaning they need to be well informed, well aware about the political context, understand the political system very well, and also do the right advocacy and create that coalition later on. Because the issue now is not whether this will be elected. My worry now, I'm seeing a lot of people excited that all what they want is to win. Well, the problem is not winning. The problem, what will happen after winning? Would you be able to deliver on all those promises? We've done, and we're going to launch it next week, we evaluated all the political platform for 14 lists or 14 major parties, opposition or not. And we've realized out of 15, they scored maximum 8 out of 15 on a list of criteria, meaning does this meet the criteria of a good political platform, meaning tangible, no rhetoric, focusing on the issues, using evidence, having measurable goal, measurable indicators, etc., etc. It worries me. Now, this is much better than 2018, by the way. This is good. So it's good to actually see there is actually improvement since 2018. We're not yet there, but I think this is a good. So I want to build on that as a glass half full, not half empty, but still way to go. There is a lot of rhetoric. We looked at the Bayanat Wazariya ministerial platform since year 2000. We're going to launch it also next week. From year 2000 till 2021, the Hassan Diab government, we focus only on health and social sector. Let me tell you this. We looked at the era 2000 to 2009, there were 6 governments. We looked at all their promises in the ministerial platform. And then we looked from 2009 to 2021. Most of the promises that came now on health and social sector or social policies were promised in the last 20 years. The same thing, universal healthcare coverage, investment in prevention, social health insurance, retirement, economy, investment in public hospitals, etc. So look what we have in public hospitals now. They are out of, many of them, they are not able to operate. Look how much we're spending of the budget from the ministry on private hospitals, not going to public hospitals. We're spending 0.5% on health prevention in Lebanon. Although if you look at the ministerial platform, they said we want to invest in primary care, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to budgets, there's no alignment between budget and what are the promises that we're promising. And this is the role of the parliament. When they hold the cabinet and the executive people accountable, this is where, that's why unfortunately we're not seeing in discussion the budget now, that alignment, not to say that we don't have a comprehensive plan as well, Paula.
Thank you, Dr. El-Jardali. I think I'd like to zoom out the frame of reference and go to you, Mr. Kostanian. Besides your role as the host of LBCI's Vision 2030, you've held positions in the Christian Kataib Party in the past, and now as executive chairman of Kulluna Irada. You continue to be involved politically, but you didn't run for office in 2018, and you aren't running now. Can you tell us why?
Listen, I believe that you have many different ways of being involved in the country. I believe that running for a public office is totally incompatible with a media position. Being the head of Kulluna Irada and having a media platform is borderline. So I asked myself many questions before doing that, and I restrict myself to a very strict anti-conflict of interest self-discipline. But doing that and running to a public office for me is totally incompatible. So I never envisaged to run to a public office, and I would not do it in a short term.
We did ask him to run. We asked many figures like Albert to run. We had to beg some of them, please run. We need good candidates. We need people that can really, that we trust at least. The problem was so many people thought that we have very difficult days to come, and they didn't want to be, part of the parliament right now or take the blame. That's not the case of Albert. I think Albert, he answered it. But we really need people. We need to encourage people like Albert and like our co-panelists to go and fight and run and be proactive. Only talking will not help. I think we need all to be engaged so we can convince them also to get engaged.
Can I say something? Yeah, but also maybe to challenge a bit, I know you didn't mean it that way, not to, but also this is one of the problems when we're discussing politics in Lebanon, that politics is not about finding good people, even if they are the best of people and the greatest of people. We need a structure, we need a political party that produces it. Unfortunately, politics is not about also begging people to become members of parliament, because people should have it as their mission, as their vocation. So this is just a minor point also as young people to think about it in terms of this is one of the main problems in our political structure in Lebanon and in the makeup of the opposition, is that till now we haven't managed to assemble all the people who talk and criticize and do great things individually in one platform. And it may very well be that as Lebanese, we don't like to work together. This is, a lot of people say it. Maybe I think it has a very large aspect of truth. But political parties usually, you know, I mean, I know one place where I was, which was the UK. You have the Conservative Party, you have the Labour Party, and they set forth candidates. They don't, you know, run after candidates. And this is due, of course, to the fact that the people who gave us the example of politics have done it in such a bad and dirty way that anybody with a bit of confidence will not want to join it, as you mentioned the example of Aristotle. So also part of it is being realistic. Entering into politics will not be ideal. You'll have to make a lot of compromises. You'll have to get your name dirty. Your name will be in the press. Your name will be attacked. I guess if you're a woman, your name will be attacked even more, I think, than men. I think that's also an issue, regardless of whether we agree politically or not. But the idea is how, I think this is also the question for the next generation. I think, I don't know who said it, that we made mistakes. I think also this is why I started my first answer, that I don't see myself in a way to tell you what to do, because I really think that it's a joint effort of trying to see how can the opposition group itself in one political party, this is my preference, that is able to be diverse and have internal debates and bring forth candidates. Because apart from that, I'll assure you, and I hope I'm wrong, that in 2026 you'll also be hearing that people are looking for candidates to run. And this is not how politics works, in my humble opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Shebaya. No worries. So I think that's the perfect way to end the discussion period of the panel. We'll now be going into a Q&A from the audience. If anyone has a question for any panelists, please raise your hand. Ivanur. And please introduce yourself and tell us who your question's addressed towards.
Hi, I'm Ivanur Ahmedi, and I'm in 11th grade. My question is for Ms. Yacoubian. You're running in the upcoming elections, and I just want to know, what do you think of the outcome of the Lebanese revolution of 2019, seeing as we still vote based on our geographical district, which is based off of the sectarian rule? Thank you.
Well, the revolution, or whatever happened in October 17, because we don't agree on one name for what happened. Anyway, this uprising is the first in our country. We've seen people in the street before, but it's the first time that people come to the street without the Za'im, and they rediscover that they're Lebanese. And it happened that day in just, it was a momentum where it happened spontaneously, and no one called for it. But this is also a revolution that is fighting 100-year tradition, conventional politics in this country. So if we want to do an assessment, it will be unfair, totally unfair. We need years and years to understand what happened that day. Revolution in Lebanon, everything is different in Lebanon. This tiny country, you cannot compare it to anything else in the world. That's why even our revolution was different. But for me, it was an awareness revolution. To tell the people of this, it was a wake-up call. And I can see the fruits right now. You're right. We only have seeds, but we are starting to see some fruits of this revolution in this election. I can compare this election to 2018. The smear campaign now is much, much bigger. The political parties, they found an understanding between each other to fight only us. And when I say us, I mean these parties, these emerging parties. After October 17, there was no more 8 and 14 March. They became one group fighting October 17 because they realized that their interests are at stake. And that if the people will wake up, it will be game over for them. That's why they hate كلن يعني كلن so much. They hate revolution so much. And that's why you have to like it, understand it, and understand what was the major issues in this revolution. ناس نزلت الطالب ببلد. And now look what they did. They went to another level. They نزلوا عليكم السيادة, sovereignty. Why they did that? Because they know they are a failure. So they went to another level, telling them that we are fighting the illegal arms. Seriously? What were you doing the last 3 decades? Nothing. All the understanding that they did together was about محاصصة. هي مش حلاقيها بالإنجليزي ما تعذبوا. هيطلع إنجليزي ده يا مرسي. Yeah. It was about محاصصة. And it's always about محاصصة. But they take a break when there's elections and they will put out these big slogans. So I don't know if I answered your question, but you know, hating what happened in October 17 or trying to say that it had bad implication on the economy is just not true. The economy wasn't doing well. When you have hard peg, you know what peg is? You know hard peg? What is the hard peg? تثبيت سعر الصرف. When you have hard peg in a country and the dollar is at 1700, it means things are not working anymore. And this is where people took the street. So what's happening today is just the normal outcome of the way they handled the country and the way the spending and everything they did. So voilà. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yacoubian. We'll take a few more questions from the audience. Raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Over there.
So, hi, my name is Kareem. I'm in grade 11, and my question is directed toward Dr. El-Jardali. And Ms. Yacoubian already brushed over this topic a little bit, but I wanted to ask, do you believe that the Lebanese people are able to adapt to a new system if it were introduced?
I think one of the, if I understand your question very well about the new culture of thinking about the political systems, and the question if it's not whether they can or not, it's about the how, because I don't think we have the luxury of anymore of not really adapting to change that is really happening. The country, unfortunately, we are starting to see a total collapse of the previous government already, the collapse was, work in progress, but now with the new government, unfortunately, or with the existing government, we're starting to see a total collapse. When we have zero electricity, that's a total collapse. I'm worried, in fact, after the election, we're going to have also collapse of other sectors. I'm hoping not. But I think we don't have the luxury of saying that. I think what we need to all work together is really how we will start actually, working together to start to adapt to a new system of not only a way of living, but also our perception thing, about perception and engagement. We are a divided society, unfortunately. You might disagree with me, but we are a multi-ethnic society, divided. We have trying to actually work, having a system that, always everybody is really trying to see, this is slicing the pie, exactly, the muhasasa that you've mentioned. And we have created an electoral law, although there has been a little bit more modernized, but still there's a preferential proportional representation, which is really more of the, engineering or many gerrymandering of more of a redistricting, etc., to make sure that people the people are in power, they are getting at least a guarantee that they will stay in power. The formula in Lebanon has been all the time, get in power, work to create laws that fits your needs and interests, and actually stay in power. So the question is, we need to change that. We don't have the luxury anymore. We will not exist. It will threaten the whole identity of what Lebanon is all about. That's why we need to work together. That's why we need to come all together. That's why the youth need to be engaged. That's your opportunity. I'm not putting the responsibility on you, but we cannot do it without you. That's why we need, I even call about academic institutions. We should not be only in the business of doing research, teaching students, and graduating people. We have to actually influence, shape how policies are getting done. We have to be in the decision-making table. We have to work with advocacy, with parties, with reformists, with youth. We need to engage. So we need, the question going back really is not about whether we can. I think it's, yes, we can. It's about now working about the how. That's what worries me. How are we going to be doing it? What is our timeline, and what is our strategy to move it forward?
Thank you, Dr. El-Jardali. I think we'll take another question.
Hi, my name is Umar, and my question is directed to Ms. Yacoubian. Funding is a very important aspect of running a campaign, and I've seen your posters and you on TV. So I was wondering if you could talk to us about your campaign funding and who your support base is for your campaign.
Well, I've answered this question many times, and it's so important to be transparent. I can tell you I'm not doing any fundraising. I'm relying on one fundraiser. He's my husband, and he is helping me to continue. Some other lists that I'm running with are getting some backing from Kuluna Irada, but really it's minimal. Because I heard some of the Lebanese politicians talking about millions and millions coming to destroy the political parties of Lebanon, millions of dollars coming to destroy this, amazing job that they have done. That's not true. That's not true. We are doing this election with minimum. I have 5 bridges because my name on the passport is Paulette Yacoubian. Paulette Siragan Yacoubian, but everyone knows me as Paula Yacoubian. And it's a huge difference in the name, the family name and the search. So that's why I had to do some visibility on my name. I do it every time. And they vandalized most of these bridges and billboards. So yeah, I'm funded by my husband. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe 1 or 2 other questions. Here.
Hi, I'm Haya, grade 10. My question is directed to Mr. Halim. Considering your work in constitutional law, do you ever see there being a Lebanese government where it's upheld? As in followed.
Yep. So I manage a large network of excellent regional lawyers and constitutional scholars. I always say I'm not a constitutional expert myself. I think if I understand your question, you're asking if if the constitution will ever be implemented. This is a political answer, so I don't have it. It's whether politically we'll be able to force the people in power to respect the constitution. But knowing the people in power, starting from the head of parliament to others, we know that even in the case of the parliament, to give you a very basic example, which is not a sophisticated technical answer, when our political class feel that they're better off to have parliament closed, they will close parliament. And this has happened. So go back and read about the 2005 to 2008 period. There was a year and a half where parliament was literally closed. So this is if you want my honest answer. Now, technically, constitutionally, I'm still of the view that we need a big revision of the constitution, not big as in changing it all, but we need to think about it. All countries go through constitutional revisions. They think about their system, except us. We've inherited the constitution and we only change it if there's war. So I think, again, and I hope that for the younger generation, always think nothing, ma fi shi munzal. If we followed the law all the time, and I know for the principal of the school, you won't like it maybe, telling them not to follow the law, but a lot of things were legal. You wouldn't perhaps be able to vote as a woman if people decided that what the current law in the status quo was upheld. Actually, women decided that actually the law was bullshit and all the men in power had to let women. So I'm still of the view, and this is a personal view, that rights are respected, but at first they must be earned. And the question is whether we have enough people who are willing to put the sacrifices to earn the rights, because people in power do not let go of power easily. You have to earn it. And this is why I'm also a big proponent of the street protests, not in themselves as a means by themselves, but they should remain, and especially for young people, a means to put pressure when you feel that something is wrong.
Thank you. I think we'll take one more question from the audience.
Hi, my name is Nazakat and I'm in grade 10. My question is addressed to Mr. Kostanian. What advice would you give youth that want to get safely involved in the Lebanese political landscape?
Safely meaning what? Like a personal safety or emotional or psychological? Because I believe the psychological damage could be greater than the physical risk. No, safely is, I believe that you should always weigh your choices, of course, this is a basic advice, and you should always go for an ideal, something related to the program, something related to the vision of the country, beyond mere slogans. I believe that in Lebanon we are a lot driven by slogans. Even the new slogans we are hearing are slogans. So we really need a project for this country. We have a lot of problems in this country. I believe our constitution, I agree with Halim, we need a major revision of the constitution. We need a new social pact in Lebanon. The business model of this country that is completely obsolete, economical, it's always about the link between East and West. We have Google doing that since the early 2000s. No one need a Lebanese intermediary anymore to take 5% of a Saudi guy that doesn't speak English. So this is, and skiing and swimming, all those founding myths of Lebanon are really a burden today. We need to reinvent all that, and this is not done by slogans. No to sectarianism. Okay, this is very beautiful, but how do we translate that into a project in a sectarian country? So I believe there is no safety in a political journey. I'm not talking about the physical. You should change. I changed personally in my political journey. You should not be stuck in a place. You evolve, you read, you mature, you change, but always go for the complex answers, the projects, the vision for this country, because I believe we have a structural deficit of project and an excess of slogans. So go to the depths and change and evolve.
Thank you, Mr. Kostanian. And at that, we've wrapped up the Q&A section. We'll now be going, I think, like how we started, we'll start with Mr. Shebaya. One final remark, 1 to 2 sentences, maybe reflecting on what we started with about disillusioned and disengaged youth with politics, or just remarks on the panel in general.
Okay. I think maybe if the one thing to take with you that I feel strongly about is that don't accept answers that I think at least when I was your age, and I think our generation was at your age, we accepted them with very good intentions, at least for myself, and with good conscience, but they were wrong. They told us that هيدا هيك لبنان بيمشي. So this is how Lebanon works. Accept it, work within the system. So this is what you have, and if you're interested in politics, you know that politics is not about big things, it's about the practice. So I think don't accept answers, hopefully, for those who are engaged, of doing things the way we did them and the previous generation did them, because we absolutely need new ways of doing things. That does not mean that you do it by yourself. I'm not saying you should not benefit from the experience of generations. That would be very short-sighted, but never accept the answer that this is how Lebanon is, because at the end of the day, we are Lebanon, and if we need leaders, and I hope that this room also will have people who will inspire others to stay in the country, fight for it, change. Obviously, there's no glory either in leaving or staying. These are all personal decisions. I need to make that caveat, but I hope you do it better than us. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jardali, one key takeaway.
In fact, I'm enjoying this conversation, I have to say. That feeling I have that, when I hear us speaking, when we, hear your questions, when we look at your eyes, we feel there's a hope. And that's why we're here, actually. And I do believe in that. But, two quick messages I want to give you. The first thing that, don't think that if you're not in the political system, this means you are not able to make a change. Not at all. In Canada, I worked in street government before I came back to Lebanon. And I realized that, even if you are within the policy-making, kitchen, sometimes if you are outside it and you can do it very well, you can make more influence in decisions more than the people that are actually working within the system, which means you have an important weapon in your hand. First of all, you have to speak truth to power, and you have every single right to do so. The engagement is to actually influence, shape, and design and co-design policies and laws. But one thing Paula mentioned, that you are a generation that you are actually fortunate to have a smartphone. In fact, if you wisely use the smartphone, you are able to fight them with evidence, because this is the best way. You are the future generation. You can easily access evidence, and high quality evidence, not any evidence, in order to put facts on the table and to speak truth to power. So I would really advise you, make sure you fight them with evidence, speak truth to power. Trust me, you have a role, and you will realize your potential if you are able to pursue it. And in fact, life is meaningless, as Albert mentioned, if there's no engagement. So my advice to you, get engaged, use the right evidence, speak truth to power, and be hopeful that you will have a better and bright future for yourself and your families.
Dr. Jardali, thank you. Ms. Yacoubian.
My ambition today is very low. I'm hoping that we can get a disruptive bloc to the government and to continue the disruption. And it's not a difficult task to do, especially if we have your backing and your support. Get social media, not only Instagram, get the other tools, they're important too. Talk to your families, to your parents about politics, and ask them why do they support this or this political party and why they don't support anyone anymore. Know your facts, like we said over and over again. And please, please, each time there is an issue, don't just listen to people talking about it. Go and dig further, especially if it's about politics. Don't you ever say, I don't want to have anything to do with politics, because politics has a lot to do with you, with your life, with your future, with any prospect. And no matter how far you will try to flee, politics will pursue you everywhere you go. So this is not something that we can not know about. It's very, very dangerous to grow up in any country in the world But in Lebanon, much, much more. It's very dangerous to grow up without knowledge, especially when it comes to good governance, to politics, to public policies, and again, what's happening on a daily basis in this country. It is your future we're talking about. It's not only going to a good university, getting good grades, and a good job later on. You can have the best job in the world. If you don't have a country that can support you, overnight you can lose everything. And I've seen it. I was born in '76. Many times we lost everything. My family lost everything. We had to change the glass of the house maybe more than 10 times. And we changed houses many times, and we still had to, rebuild it. It's just a symbolic way to tell you how much you need to know, because the future is really in your hands. Thank you.
And to wrap us up, Mr. Kostanian.
Thank you. So maybe it's the occasion also for me to remember my college years. I remember that I started at a political debate club in the French lycée. That was my school. And the first person that I invited was Gebran Touaini. It was in '95. Then we invited Samir Asir. Then we invited Faris Said, because he was also an ex from this college. And I remember that the goal was then, Lebanon was under Syrian occupation, and for us, getting the Syrian out, the Syrian army, not the Syrian people, the Syrian occupation, then was a dream that was really fantastic, or something that we would never dreamt of achieving one day. And 10 years after, it was done. It was done because the Lebanese people stood because of March 14, because of many genuine things, and because of an alignment of international interest, of course. But the Lebanese people were there asking for their right, and then an alignment of stars made it possible. So what I want to say is that everything is possible as long as we keep asking for it, keep asking for our rights. Change is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It will be, it's a long-lasting effort. I know also that we live in time of instant results. We want everything to happen by magic because of the digital world in the hour. It's change does not happen like that. It's a sustained effort. It will take years, and we must commit to it, and we must see the result slowly. I'll end by really trying to transmit a genuine hope in the future of this country. I sincerely believe that the best is yet to come. I believe that this country has struggled a lot during the past century. Its own borders were not final. And this is very funny in our constitution. It's the only constitution in the world, I believe, that clearly states in the preamble, in the foreword, that Lebanon is an end country or a definitive country, in Arabic, وطن نهائي لجميع أبنائه. So this is crazy that we should mention that in the constitution. It should be natural. This is because for a century this was not natural. The border were not accepted. Some people wanted a smaller country, others wanted to dilute it in a bigger Arab space. Also, the understanding of the Lebanese people was not also quite final. The sectarian identity was more important than the national identity. I believe after a century, today we have borders. Everyone is really attached to the borders of this country. And we all have a national belonging. It took a century to get there. What we need is the third stepping stone. It's a state. We still don't have a state. We were talking about the constitution or the parliament. We don't have a constitution. What Paula said about the parliament, it's not a parliament, it's Nabih Birri courtyard, despite all the goodwill of Paula or other MPs. We need to build the state. And your generation comes at a very privileged moment, I believe, where this is possible. So please run the marathon and you will get there someday.
And at that, this is the end of the ACS political panel. Our panelists will be sticking around for a bit if anyone wants to come up and speak to them. Other than that, this panel is now out of session, and thank you to our panelists again.